Is color mixing causing confusion or even mud in your paintings? Join me today as we explore the order, beauty, and design found within the color wheel. In this first color theory lesson that we're going to do together, I'm going to share with you the secrets of creating an endless array of vibrant colors using only 3 tubes of paint so that you can simplify and streamline your color mixing process. Welcome back to Sunlit Brushstrokes. My name's Jessica and I'm super excited you've joined me today as we study color theory together. Color is a topic I am so excited about because I've seen how understanding color has influenced my own work. It's made it more vibrant and it's also made the process more straightforward and simple. So I'm hoping that by sharing the tips that I've learned, I can help you as well. Today, we're going to be painting this color wheel and it will become a dynamic tool for us for future lessons. And I'm going to be referring to it again and again throughout the projects that we do together so that we can really be applying the lessons that we learned today. The color wheel itself kind of looks unexciting. It's just a circle with blobs of color. But when you grasp color theory, it's going to transform the way that you approach painting and color mixing. I believe by sticking with the 3 primary colors while you're learning, you're going to be able to understand how to keep things vibrant and beautiful every time you mix color, but you're also going to know how to mix neutrals when you want them. A side benefit of working with a limited palette like this is that you're going to save money on tubes of paint. You're going to reduce the stress and the frustration that come with decision fatigue when you've got a huge number of either paint pans or paint tubes, and you just don't really know which one to grab when and which ones are going to mix with what to make mud. This is going to streamline your process. As a bonus, by putting all these colors together into a color wheel, you're going to suddenly have the foundation for understanding warm versus cool colors, which have vast applications beyond just fine art. We're going to touch on color schemes as well, and these things are built right into the color wheel. And once you understand them, you can apply them in interior design, graphic design. They'll become useful in hobbies like card making, scrapbooking, quilting. And of course, color schemes are going to be applicable in your fine art as well. When you study color theory, you are going to gain so much confidence in color. You can mix the color you need with a limited color palette whenever you need that color. But you're also going to know how to expand your palette if you choose to, or even when you find yourself with tubes of paint or pans of paint that have a broader range than what you're used to working with, you're going to automatically know where those colors fit into the color wheel, how to use them, and even what their limitations might be. By working with a few colors, you're going to know how to use any color effectively. And to me, when I study the color wheel, I think it truly points to an amazing creator who's placed such order, design, and beauty in his creation. I can't wait to get started. Let's go. So to get started here, I'm going to transfer this color wheel onto a piece of watercolor paper. The watercolor paper that I'm using is just a cheaper watercolor paper. You can use Arches, it's not necessary for this particular exercise. So I'll include a link in the description for the cheaper paper if you decide you want to buy that. I'm going to do it similar to what I just did not too long ago on one of my videos. I'll include a link as well for that video if you haven't seen it, so we don't cover all of our steps on transferring again. And I'm going to just go ahead and tape it down in the corners. Maybe even 2 corners is enough. And you can find the download for this, again, the link for this in the description. You can go ahead and download if you want to use the exact same color wheel as I'm using. I'm going to modify it a little bit, but otherwise, yeah, you can just follow along. You can go ahead and print the color wheel off on just regular computer paper, and then you can transfer this image onto your watercolor paper. Okay, that's transferred. I'm going to go ahead and just darken some of the outlines of these little circles. And you can also, if you want to, add the little names like red, green, whatever, and whether it's a secondary or primary color, you can go ahead and add those if you want to add as well. And then finally, you can just go ahead and lift off any extra smudges, pencil smudges, graphite smudges, whatever. And I ended up putting my color names in pen so that they wouldn't smudge as much. If you want to use pen, you can use pen, or you can use pencil. I actually did it with pencil and then decided gonna go ahead and just use pen so that it's a little bit bolder. So you can do what you want there. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with our paint. I'm going to be using my number 8 round for this project. And what I've done is I've actually put a little bit of fresh watercolor in my palette just so that it was definitely clean, not contaminated with other colors. If you want, you can do that. The first color that we're going to start with is the yellow. And so I'm just going to go ahead and fill that in. And again, like I said, I've got the cleanest color kind of at the edges here, so I'm just going to grab it just so that we have a really nice clear color for this yellow, so we don't have a muddy yellow. And I'm just going to fill that in. And I've talked about these colors before, and I'll give the link in the video again. It's the same one as my transfer paper video. But I really do like the M-Gram or the Van Gogh paint for this. In general, those are the paints that I'm using. One of them is a little cheaper than the other, and that's the only reason I would say to choose the less expensive one, is just, you know, go based on what works for you. And then I'm going to go ahead and do our blue. So I'm going to wash my brush. I've got a couple of water here. I could kind of pull one of them into the screen a little bit so you can tell. What I like to do is, if I have the opportunity to use 2 jars, have one for your dirty water and then one for your clean water. That way you'll keep at least some water clean as you're working for getting into fresh mixtures. So let's go ahead and do the blue. You could actually do the red or the blue. And this is where I want to take a little tangent and discuss primary colors. Because if you've ever had a situation where you've been like, well, I tried making, like say maybe a purple, let's say, from using primary colors, and you're like, it just didn't work. What's wrong with me? Well, you're in good company. Don't worry. That probably had more to do with the paint you were using than anything else. So we're going to discuss primary colors and why it is that some primary colors seem to work really well for making beautiful mixtures, and why it is that some primaries, in spite of your best efforts, they tend to end up with like just a muddy color. So we're going to discuss that in a minute here. I'll just go ahead and get my red on here and then just wash my brush here. And then we're going to discuss color. So I'm going to grab my red, which this red is quinacridone rose. And this is a really important aspect of our color mixing. And where I kind of got things wrong for a while was my perception of what a good primary red was. Now, I'm just gonna, sorry, my paint's drying out a bit. I'm having to grab a little bit more. I want this to be really deep. We're gonna get onto the primary red here in a minute. As you can see though, it is very pink red. And this actually would be, if you think about your printer at home, like your printer for your computer, if you've ever had to change or replace the cartridges of ink, you've probably noticed that it doesn't actually have like the red that you would think of as a primary red. Instead, it's got magenta. And the reason for that is that magenta actually creates more variety in your color wheel. I'm going to discuss this in a quick sec, than just using kind of an orange red would. So I'm just going to wash my brush here. So let's go ahead and discuss primary colors here, because this is where I used to get a little bit stuck and a little bit confused with my colors. So let's discuss what I thought were primary colors, and they are still considered primary colors, but the colors that we're going to be able to get our mixtures from using these 3 primaries are going to be limited. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and paint my color wheel. This is just a little bit of a cheaper paint here, but I'm going to paint the color wheel using the primary colors, and I'm going to show you the mixtures that I'm able to get when we do our secondary colors. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint my yellow and my red and my blue in these spots. I'm going to just bring it into the camera a bit so you can see it. It's a very bright, kind of a cherry red. And this is really what I would have thought was a beautiful primary until, excuse me, I'm a little bit sloppy with my painting here. Excuse that mess. That's not a very good circle. That's okay. You got the point. It's supposed to be a circle. Okay, let's go ahead and add the blue. And then we're going to make our mixtures. So just painting this with, this is an ultramarine blue. And ultramarine is a pretty good blue. It's a little bit more limited for making greens. But if you like your greens to be kind of a neutral olivey green, then you'll be fine with this blue. But I'm going to explain the blue that I prefer. So there we go. We've got our primaries there. And I'm just going to go ahead and do our mixtures here for our secondary colors. Now the secondary colors are the colors that you're going to get when you mix two primaries together. So if you've got a yellow and a blue, mix them together, you're going to get, you guessed it, a green. If you mix the red and the yellow, what are you going to get? An orange. And if you mix the blue and the red, you should get a purple. Let's see what happens. So when we mix colors, it's always kind of convenient to take the lighter color and make our mixture with it first, because it tends to very quickly get overpowered by the darker colors. So let's go ahead and do our orange first. And orange with this particular mixture is going to work okay. Let's see how it is. You know what, I already have overpowered it. I think I could do with a little tiny bit more yellow here. Just wash my brush quick. Let's throw just a tiny bit more yellow because I think that our orange could be just not quite as red. Whoops. Just hold it down and paint this. Okay, so that's a pretty reasonable orange. Let's go ahead and do the green. And this is, like I said, we're going to kind of get a green that's a little bit less vibrant, and we'll discuss why that is. But let's just pick another well in my little palette here. This is just a cheap plastic palette, and as you can tell, it's stained. It's been used before. I'm just going to grab a little bit, actually wash my brush, because I do want to keep my mixtures clean for this. I know I'm not always very careful about that, but with this project, I do want to make sure I've got clean paint in my primary colors. So I'm not sure. The blue is usually the most overpowering color, so I'm going to try and take it cautiously. Yeah, I can add a little bit more, I think. Again, you can see I have a bad habit of dipping in with a dirty brush. I almost did it again. Now, I have to say, I like this green, but if I'm wanting something a little bit like on the teal side, this isn't going to cut it. Even if I add more blue, all I'm going to end up with is kind of more of a dark, kind of olivey green. So we're running into some limitations here with these primaries. Let's go ahead and make our purple. So the lighter color here is, I'm just washing, making sure my brush is good and clean. Okay, our lighter color here is this red. So I'll just put it in this well. I don't have any rhyme or reason for what well I'm picking when I do this. You can see I really am almost dipping in with a dirty brush. I'm trying to stop myself because I'm like, no, you guys don't want to see more mud than we have to here. So I'm probably gonna, well, let's see, let's make this, might need more blue. It's a pretty color, but let's just throw a tiny bit more blue, because to me that's kind of on the red side still. Yeah, got a lot on my brush. Put a little bit more still. A lot of the time when I work, I don't always need to have perfectly clean pigments, and that's why I have this habit of dipping in when my brush isn't very clean. But when I'm teaching you, especially what the problem is with certain colors that they create mud, you wouldn't know whether the mud was from the paint or whether it was from me if I don't keep my brush clean in this exercise. But I think we got a reasonable purple, so let's go ahead and paint that on there. Okay, there's our purple. And it's not bad. It's probably not the most vibrant purple in the world, but let's Just leave it like that. And we're gonna go and do the same thing using our paints that we have here. So the Hansa Yellow, or well, depending which pigment you're using, which paint brand you're using, it could be Hansa Yellow Deep, or I've got the Van Gogh brand, so it's transparent yellow medium, and my quinacridone rose and my phthalo blue. So I'm just going to go ahead, repeat the steps over here now. So I'm going to grab my yellow first, fill that in, red, or my quinacridone rose, but we can just call it red for all practical purposes. You can see it's very vibrant. Yeah, I'm really slopping on the red today, aren't I? Let's change positions. Another thing we'll discuss is value, where depending how much paint to water you use, it can change how dark or light this is. I'm not really worrying about that today. All I'm trying to do is just show you how these colors are working. So last of all, I'm going to grab my phthalo blue and fill that circle up. Ooh, I got really thick there. Might even lift a little bit of it out because it's almost looking black just because I've got so much, which is a sign of a good pigment. If it's so dark that it can almost look black when you put it on straight, it means that you have a huge range of options for yourself as you're painting, because all you need to do to lighten it is add water. So don't ever feel alarmed if you open a tube of paint and it's almost black. When it's a dark color like a blue, obviously. A yellow that's almost black, there's a problem. But if you've got a blue that's almost looking black when you open the tube, it's a good sign. It means you've got very concentrated paint and it's going to last you a long time, and it's a high quality. Cheaper paints are usually filled with more binders and other things that just dilute them, and they don't come out of the tube very intense. And it means you're going to need to use more of them to get the same effect. All right, so let's make our colors. So let's do the same order we did before. Let's start with the orange, work into the green, and finally the purple. So I'm just going to move my water out of the way because I'm always reaching across, and I don't know that that's of any benefit to you guys to see every single time I wash my brush. Or maybe it is. I guarantee Jessica actually washes her brush. Okay, let's get our orange made. So I'm just going to mix it right here. So I'm using my yellow, rinse my brush out, and grab some of this rose. Rather than call it quinacridone rose, let's just call it rose. We know what we're talking about now. I'm scraping in there. Okay, too much red now. Well, maybe it'll be okay. Let's test it. I feel like I really didn't make enough paint even, but let's see how it goes on. Yeah, not enough paint. Let's repeat the steps and just get more of it. And actually, of all the colors you will find with this particular set of primaries, the orange is the one that's the weakest in terms of being the strength of this color palette. I would say no color palette, if you're only using primaries, is absolutely perfect, but this is the closest I found to being able to just use 3 colors. And like I say, it's very helpful for learning color theory to really limit yourself down, and you can understand color better. So I still think I'm too watery. Yes, I'm still too watery. I'm gonna repeat this step one more time to get it a little more dense. Okay, I think we're finally getting an orange that's gonna work. Let's try this. Yes, okay, there we go. Much better. Now let's move on to our green. So I'm gonna start with our yellow, and I'll do the mixture on the other side. Again, I'm not as particular about keeping my colors separate because I don't tend to work with incredibly bright colors, but for this exercise, I want to keep things as clean as possible, just so you can see the full effect of what pure hues are looking like. So let's add a little bit of this. Now this phthalo blue, if you've watched me mix color before, you know it's intense. So I'm just laying some aside here before I mix it into my yellow. It's not going to take much, so I'm trying to be kind of cautious. Yeah, almost too much already. So I might add a bit of yellow. Well, let's try it. Let's put this in our circle and see how it looks. It might be okay. I might need a bit more yellow. Let's touch on the teal side. It's not bad. But again, I think I've run into the problem of needing more paint too, so. Okay, mixing up a little bit more green. We'll see. I still might be a little bit on the stingy side here. Okay, that's okay. It's enough. It'll do. All right. And you can already see there's a difference between those two greens. One is very vibrant, very green. This one's dull. And the good news is that you can always dull a bright color down, but you can never brighten up a dull color if you don't have primaries that are clean and intense enough. And so that is why I would prefer to use the phthalo blue over the ultramarine blue, because I'm able to get a very vibrant green. However, there's ways that we can dull that down. And so we're going to talk about dulling down colors another day. However, there's just no amount of mixing I could do with these two to get a vibrant green. These two, there's another color that I could add. There's a hint for you that would dull that green down. So finally, we're onto our purple. The lighter color here would be the magenta. It's a little lighter and less intense than our phthalo blue. So let's get a little bit more, since it seems like I keep running low every time. I'm just adding the blue there. You can already tell what a beautiful purple we're getting. It's just a lot more intense. There's a lot more life and light in this purple. So I may need more, but let's see if we can get enough here to paint our tiny little circle. It could be a darker purple. Could add a little bit more paint here, but you can see the light version. Let me go ahead and just repeat these steps. There we go. That's just a little bit more deep. And you can see, looking at that, I think you can tell when you compare those two purples. Let's get the camera in nice and close so we can have a good comparison of these. So you can tell this purple is definitely a brighter purple. We have a lot more options that we can dull it down if we want to. We can pull it closer to the blue, closer to the red, whatever. But we're gonna have a lot more options with this one than we will with this one, because like I've said, there's secrets for dulling colors. There aren't any for brightening them. So we definitely are happier with our purple and our green, and I actually don't mind that orange at all. So like I said, the colors that are most likely to be limited on this palette could be the oranges, but overall, we get way nicer colors using our magenta kind of pink and our cyan type of blue and our yellow. And so when you hear people talk about color palettes, you might hear like the CMY, or in the case of the computer printer, it will say CMYK, and the K just stands for the black. There's black ink in your printer as well. Or here we have you might call it the red, yellow, blue color primaries. But like I say, they are limited in their scope of what you can go ahead and mix with them. So let's go back and work on our larger color wheel again. We're going to get our secondary colors in there, which are the orange, the green, and the purple. And then we'll talk about tertiary colors. So we're going to be doing the same steps that we've just been doing to get our colors, and we might even have enough colors here. So let's just see, maybe we have enough orange that we can just fill in the orange with what we have. I think we'll make it maybe. I think I'm gonna have to make a little bit more. I've gone ahead and added a little bit more yellow, and I added actually all the primaries, a little bit more fresh paint to each of those wells. Not because that's a thing I usually do. Usually, as you know, I'm all for just jumping in and using what I have, and very rarely do I need a bright, intense color. However, when I'm working with this particular project, because I want to make sure that the colors are super intense, basically as intense as I can get them in order to demonstrate the potential of these colors, I'm trying to work with super clean paint. But usually, that's not necessary. Usually I don't need such bright colors. And if I add any color to my palette, most likely it's going to be the yellow, because it's the one that sometimes you do need to have it pretty clean. I find my other colors, I don't know, I just don't find I need to do that as often. one of the reasons that we're doing this is to learn how we can save money on paint, right? We only need to buy 3 tubes of paint. So it sort of defeat the purpose if in order to only use 3 tubes of paint, you had to constantly be adding new paint to your palette and clean paint and worrying about that. Like I say, I do not worry about that when I know that I don't need a super intense color. And because I understand when I want those intense colors and when I don't, I can make that decision. Do I need to put new paint on my palette right now or not? So I'm going to go ahead now. And you know what? I'm going to start working. Well, should I do the tertiaries as I go? No. So let's go ahead and do our green. Now I've got some of my green sort of here, but I'm just going to go ahead and make a bit more. Grab a bit more water. And I'm also washing my brush more, a lot more than I usually would. Again, in the name of keeping this as vibrant as possible. What we're working with today is pure hues. A hue is the basic color when we just say yellow, blue, red, orange, whatever. That's a hue. And we're working with very clean, pure hues because we don't have any crossover happening in the color wheel yet. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how to mute colors, how to create some dullness in your color when you want that dullness, because as we're doing today, we're trying to avoid any dullness as possible because we're wanting to just demonstrate how bright we can get our colors and how clean and just the variety of pure hues we can achieve. However, we will do an exercise that we're going to kind of practice getting some neutral colors and some different, basically just muted colors, or some people might call them muddy colors, but sometimes we want those colors when we're working. So there's a time and a place for them, so we're going to talk about that. Alrighty, last of our secondary colors is our purple. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my magenta or my rose. Let's call it rose. And then we'll add some of our phthalo blue to it. Pull it over from over there, add some blue over there. So yeah, I think this is actually not a bad medium. I don't know if you want to call it purple or violet, either way. I usually call it purple. Again, I feel like I'm a little on the watery side. We'll see. Let's try, see if we can get a little bit more. You can see I'm not being super precise with getting perfect circles here. And that doesn't really matter. We're getting the point of our color exercise, I think. All right, time to work our way into our tertiary colors. So let's go ahead and work our way into the yellow orange. I was getting so excited with my colors earlier, I almost just jumped right into that, but let's go ahead and do that now. So I think I almost have some here because I've got definitely a color that's more yellow. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill that in. And if you don't have this color kind of already starting to happen on your palette from your color mixing, just go ahead, add a little bit of extra yellow to your orange. And then we'll go ahead and paint this. Just grab a little bit more. Like I say, I feel like I'm working quite watery and I'm not liking that, so I'm trying to throw extra paint on there. I think that's pretty good. All right, so now I'm going to do the red orange. So that's just a matter of adding a little bit more of our rose to this color. Oh, kind of touching that before I washed my brush, aren't I? I was touching it carefully. Let's hope it doesn't. Yeah, let's wash our brush. Like I say, I'm being neurotic right now. I do not like being so particular with washing my brush so many times. I just feel like I end up throwing paint down the drain. I usually have 2 paint brushes on the go. Maybe that's what I should be doing because I feel like I'm washing my brush all the time. I really want us to have some really nice, clean colors. And we do need more red in there for sure. Okay, that's better. I added extra rose to there. Could still even go a little bit. I think even a little bit more. Yeah, we need more still. Let's add some more magenta or rose, whatever color we're going to call this. We could call this red or rose or magenta, it's all kind of, it all works, but it is our red. It's what we're using is our primary red. So you know what I'm going to do, because it's so orange already, I'm going to make it a little extra on the red side when I drop it in, and it will probably balance it out. Let's do that. Yeah. I'm mixing on my paper rather than in the palette because I was so orange. I decided to jump a little bit to the almost too rosy side to kind of bring that back into the range I wanted it to. There we go. Happier with that. All right, let's move down to the red violet. That took longer than I wanted on that one. But this one, we're going to go ahead, take a nice juicy scoop of our rose color and just add some water and a little bit of this purple, and we will be good to go. Let's try this. I'm just pulling a little bit more blue here because I feel like, you know what, I wouldn't mind if this was just a little bit more pigment compared to the water. Yeah, that's better. Okay, now I'm going to use the same mixture and just add a little bit more blue to it so that it's on the blue side, and we're going to call that good. So let's grab ourselves some phthalo blue. Ooh, I might have jumped a little too phthalo. Should know this is such a deep color. Well, this color here, the edge isn't so bad. It's kind of on the purple side. It might be good enough. Let's try it, and if it seems like a nice balance between these two, we'll leave it, and if I need to, I can throw a little bit more magenta if I need to. Definitely, I'm really going too watery today, aren't I? I really am. More magenta. Okay, I think this is going to be better. Let's try this. I think this is a nice good balance for a blue violet. It's a little bit more on the medium range of between these two colors. So I'm going to call that good. And then we're going to move up to the blue green. And so I'm going to go starting into the green and just add more blue to my green that I already have. And so that makes this one easy. I can already tell I'm too watery, so let's just go ahead and add a little bit more of that blue color into it. Yeah, I think this is good. And this is a color you would definitely not be able to achieve if you were working in that other color palette I showed you with the primary colors. Let's just go grab it to remind ourselves what we were achieving for a green. You can definitely see this was a more of an olive color, and so if you can kind of imagine something between these two, it definitely would not end up such a teal color. It would definitely have kind of, like I say, a darker olive look. So that's what I really like about the phthalo blue rather than the ultramarine blue. And we're going to discuss the ultramarine blue quick here in a minute too, to just explain some of the differences. Last but not least, we are going to do our yellow green. So I'm going to take a nice scoop of the yellow and just put it into a portion of my blue here. I don't want to get too much of the blue into it, or I should say into my blue green. I think this is good just like that. So I'm going to use it. And we have a nice yellow green. So you can see just by using these three colors, the yellow, the rose, and blue, we're able to achieve a vast array of colors. We could have even gone in between and gotten colors kind of in between each of these. And if you added extra water, you would learn you could get lighter values of each of these colors. You could also, and we're going to do this, another exercise, is neutralizing these colors so that instead of, you know, always having bright colors, we can actually take a bright color palette and dull it down. And you can do that using all of these colors. Whereas you can never take a duller color palette or one that's got neutral colors, or, you know, even something like this where the colors are just a little bit dull. You can never really brighten these up. And so by having such a range of colors, we have so many options at our fingertips. Some people might feel like there is some limitations to this palette still, but for the most part, if you can work with these three colors, it's going to provide you with such an array of colors, as well as it's going to limit how much decision fatigue you're experiencing, because you're going to know, okay, as you mix colors, you've only got 3 you're working with, and then you can, add a little more of really 2 other colors or 1 other color to get the color you're after. And so it really makes your mixing easy, and I will demonstrate that in future projects. I'll try and really bring in this color wheel and demonstrate how just using these 3 primary colors we can do so much. That's all I really work with, is using the primaries. As I mentioned before, some people do like to have a ultramarine blue. It's not necessary. An ultramarine blue would fit somewhere kind of between these 2 colors here. And this is why, and we're going to talk about complementary colors and mixing complementary colors and neutral colors. But if you can kind of imagine when we went, if you can rewind in your mind, when we did these colors down here, we did have a small amount of rows. Well, we had a lot of rows here, a little less, and then even less here, but we still had some rows, which means if an ultramarine blue fits somewhere in this area here, it's not really a neutral blue. It's a little bit of a purple blue. And a purple blue is made of red and blue. Now, when you mix that with some yellow, you're actually pulling all 3 of these colors into the mixture, which is why when we got this green here, it's a neutral green. It's been neutralized because there actually is a teeny weeny little bit of red in this blue, and that teeny little bit of red is turning this from a vibrant green into a dull green. The same thing goes for this color here. It's kind of like, if you could imagine when we were mixing, we could get a pretty close, and we could have even got closer to this color by mixing a little bit of yellow into this magenta color. So in a sense, we could say this does have red and yellow in it. It makes it sound confusing, but that type of red, it's a warm red. We're going to discuss color temperature in a sec. But if you think of it as already having a little bit of yellow in it, then you mix that yellow with your yellow red, if you will, with your blue, you're going to get a purple that's not quite as clean as if you've got something like this magenta and this blue here. So I mentioned something about color temperature, and I want to cover color temperature more another day. But you've probably heard of warm colors and cool colors, and you've probably always wondered, well, what does that mean? And it's something that's really convenient to understand just in general, because color temperature comes up in areas besides just painting. We can talk about color temperature and when we're talking about design work, or when we're talking about just a color palette on maybe a pattern on fabric, or you might talk about a color scheme that you're going to decorate a room with. And so when we talk warm colors, we can divide the color palette here in half. So if we divide it in half, where my paintbrush is laying, these colors here are kind of our warmer colors, the warmest color being orange. And this side is the cool colors, with our coolest color being blue. Easy way to remember is if you think about something hot or fire, you do think about orange. And if you think about ice, you kind of do get this picture in your mind of kind of a blue color, right? So it makes it easy to recall what's warm, what's cool. And if you divide it about there, you can kind of go, okay, and if this side's more cool, this side's more warm, this is the warmest. And so when we take any single color from this wheel here, and we say, well, maybe you're like, well, I've heard of like warm reds and cool reds. You could say, okay, well, this is a warmer red because it's closer to the orange, and this is a cool red because it's further from the orange than this one. It's getting a little bit closer to the blue. So technically, the warmer one is whatever's closest to the orange. So, a warmer green, it is closer to the orange than this green. You could say this is a cool green or even a cooler green. So the closer you get to blue, the cooler the color is. The closer you get to orange, the warmer the color is. And this also starts to have an impact on colors as we talk about neutral colors, because sometimes the process of mixing all 3 primaries together is really the secret to creating neutrals. And some people might say that makes mud, and it can make mud, but when you know what you're doing and you're making intentional choices to mix these colors, you can get beautiful neutrals. If you're intending to not get a neutral color and you end up with a mixture of these 3 together, then you're going to be saying, hey, I've got mud, this is awful. But it's really just a matter of needing to subtract one of those primaries to get a vibrant color, or maybe just reduce one of those primaries to get the color you're after. So that is where the warm and the cool come in. And also when you hear about mud and muddy colors, where those are going to come in and also play a role when we talk about warm versus cool and mud versus clean, vibrant colors. I also apply the warm cool thing when I'm going to go make the layers for my watercolor painting. I've learned that by applying some of these warmer colors first, especially the yellow, and then even, if you've got some oranges, get them on there, and then working my way towards the cooler colors and the darker colors can help me avoid mud as I'm working. And so again, I'm going to discuss that as I'm actually painting, because it's easier to see that in practice than me just discussing it like looking at this color wheel today. There's also a concept of color value from light to dark within the color palette. And again, we'll discuss this another day, but it will also help you make your decisions regarding shadows. When you start to think about your lightest values as being at the top of the color wheel here, and your darker values, or the colors that get darker, closer to the bottom. Now, I will say I got so much blue on this one in comparison to the rest of these. It's kind of a little bit like you're going, okay, this is the darkest color. Well, if I had have added more paint, a little less water, which is maybe what I should go over this and do, you would see I'd be able to get a very, very dark purple that would actually be darker than that blue. Why don't we do that? Because I don't know. I don't even like that purple being so light. So let's just do that right now. Try and get a darker purple happening so that you can see that really purple would be a nice deep dark value. If you're going to do shading and you're trying to figure out how to get darker, you can work your way down the color palette. And we're going to talk about that again another day. So many of these things are really easier to be understood when you actually see it in practice, or when I'm actually, say, painting something with you. Let's see if this is enough darkness. I might have to go ahead and make up more paint. I don't know. That's already helping though. That purple's getting darker, and you can go, oh, okay, I can see why you're saying the colors get darker as they get to the bottom of the palette, or the bottom of the color wheel. That's starting to look a bit better. I'm going to go ahead and just do a little bit more paint on this one as well. You can see as I'm doing this, it's obvious, like, with watercolor, it is in a way better to work from light. Well, definitely better to work from light to dark. It also gives you that little bit of grace that you can easily throw more darks on top if it didn't turn out as dark as you'd like it to. It is harder to lift. You can lift color and pigment out of a shape, but sometimes it can just be a little bit more challenging. It's easier to add another layer than to subtract one. So you can see when we want to go shade or layer our watercolor on a painting, we would want to start with our lighter colors first and work our way to our dark, and partly by layering, partly by just our choices of color. But having this color palette in your mind is going to help you as you make those choices. Have you ever heard of complementary color schemes, or triadic color schemes, or analogous color schemes? Well, this is where this color wheel is going to help you as well. When we say complementary color schemes, we are simply meaning a color scheme or combination of colors where one color is used in a design project, or in maybe decor, or in artwork, where you've taken one color and you're also using the color that's exactly the opposite of it on the color wheel. So if you just draw a straight line from any one color to the next, you can see its complement. So the complement to yellow is purple, or the complement to purple is yellow. The complement to this red color, we could say rose, is green, or from green to rose. And you can kind of see that play out in Christmas colors. This one is a little on the rosy side for Christmas, but you could say Christmas colors are a complementary color scheme. The orange and the blue are right across the color wheel from each other. You can also draw these complementary color schemes within the tertiary colors. So this yellow green and this red violet, or yellow orange to blue violet. I actually think this particular combination, the yellow orange and the blue violet, if you get the right kind of maybe dullness of tone to these colors, I think they're gorgeous in the fall. in Alberta where I live, a lot of the leaves tend to turn kind of more this color. I know some people get really rich reds. We don't really get a lot of red per se. We tend to get our leaves, at least the trees that are close to me, we tend to get a lot of this kind of more yellow orange color. And it's amazing. At that time of the year, the sky itself tends to look more of a blue violet, a very light blue violet, but it actually can start kind of just, these colors just tend to sing to me in the fall in Alberta. Like I say, this is a darker version. The sky is not that dark, but a blue violet. I tend to think about fall when I look at that color scheme. So that would be a complementary color scheme. An analogous color scheme is simply one where the three colors are side by side. So like you could say these three colors could form an analogous color scheme, or these three colors, or just pick any three colors on your color wheel. And those colors, if you're wanting to create artwork, they'll look fine together. They look great together or in a pattern. A triadic color scheme would be where three colors that are equally spaced on the color wheel would create a scheme of colors that work well together. So the primary colors work really nicely together. The secondary colors work nicely together. So you can see I'm kind of creating an inverted triangle as I do this with the end of my brush. The orange, the green, the purple, those colors tend to work very beautifully together. And you can do that with the tertiary colors as well. So you can see the red, orange, the blue, violet, the yellow, green. Those colors actually can look quite good in a color scheme together. So those are some examples of triadic color schemes. And finally, we have the tetradic color schemes, which are where you have four colors that are, say, forming a box or a square rectangle within the color wheel. So when I kind of go from the yellow orange, red violet, blue violet, yellow green, you can kind of see I'm forming a square with the end of my brush. You can do that anywhere, any direction on the color palette. Just kind of take that, do a perfect rectangle here, or even a perfect square. And you can also get a color scheme working with that. Now, if all of that is going over your head, do not worry. There's a lot of information you can also find about color schemes that just use the basic color wheel. If you decide to purchase this printable color wheel from my Etsy shop, you'll also receive some printable worksheets such as the color schemes and full color schemes that you could color in yourself, and another worksheet that we'll do in the future to study our neutral colors. I'll also add, any full color printable is something that you're going to want to print onto like a smooth paper, such as a 32 pound. It's going to keep those colors more vibrant and accurate. So I'll just mention that as well. By having an understanding of the color wheel, you can start to understand color schemes, color temperature, and you can understand how to mix color. You can definitely save on tubes of paint. You don't need nearly as many colors, and it will also reduce your stress. Once you start working with just three colors, you're going to have just as time goes on, you will get a deeper and deeper understanding of the way the colors interact with each other. And it'll make you more confident so that when you ever do end up throwing more tubes of paint into your collection or whatever, you are going to understand where that tube of paint fits into the color wheel. You'll also understand, its intensity and whether it would be a neutralized color or whether it would be a more pure intense color. You're going to just have so much more confidence as you continue to work with a limited number of tubes of paint and build up your knowledge of color theory. And finally, when I look at the color wheel, I am in awe of a creator who created color and put such order and design in there, especially when I see how those color schemes work together. And you can, just space out the colors in the color wheel and have schemes that just flow beautifully together. The way that the colors work as they neutralize each other, they complement each other. There's just so much order and design just within this very basic color wheel. And I just say, wow, we have an amazing creator. And not only did he create that, he gave us cones in our eyes. You have rods and cones. Well, the cones allow you to see color. Your brain also perceives color. And all those things work together so that we can enjoy this world even more. could have just had a black and white world for that matter. But I'm so thankful that God created color and he gave us eyes and minds to be able to see and appreciate it and even understand it, and to be able to plot things out like this color wheel today, and use it to our advantage as we're painting or just enjoying his creation or doing our own forms of creativity. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope this tutorial has brought a little taste of God's beauty and goodness into your everyday life, that it's filled your heart with awe in his design, and that it has inspired you to continue to enjoy your own creative journey. See you again soon. Bye.